We live in an era of historical note. I feel a lot of interesting stuff happening day by day. An unprecedented move has taken place in the state of Colorado. The state Supreme Court has ruled that on the grounds of the 14th Amendment, Donald Trump is disqualified from being on the ballot for the presidency, meaning that he will not appear on the Colorado ballot. A largely symbolic move, considering the fact that Colorado was not going to go red anyway, but still a monumental one. So we have two very different takes on this from two different news organizations, which also kind of like, I guess, split my thoughts on the matter. From CBS News, Colorado Supreme Court rules Trump is disqualified from presidency for January 6th riot. And then from NBC News, Colorado hands Trump a political gift by barring him from the ballot. Yeah. So let's watch the video here real quick. I'll share my thoughts on this. There's a lot to get into here, I feel, but this is a very, very big deal.
Vivek Ramaswamy, or today, former President Trump's Republican rivals are reacting to the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to bar Trump from the primary ballot there. Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ron DeSantis all slammed the court's ruling. And even one of Trump's top critics, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, is speaking out against the decision.
I do not believe Donald Trump should be prevented from being president of the United States by any court. I think he should be prevented from being president of the United States by the voters of this country.
Joining us now, NBC's Garrett. Hey, Garrett, good morning. Do you think this could be...
Oh, what a hateable-looking man, I must say. You sure are smirking as the camera opens on you. Why are you doing that face?
Having an impact one way or another on the GOP primary? I mean,
you look like a Sherlock villain.
Everything that has happened right now has only been to the benefit of the former president. But could this politically play a big part?
I think it could, Jose, in part because of the timing so close to the Iowa caucuses. I think there's a pretty widespread belief in Republican circles, both close to the former president and even from folks who are supporting his opponents, that this is the kind of thing that actually helps the former president because it, again, makes him look like a victim. He can play up his victimhood as though he is being attacked by a liberal judicial machine that is desperate to keep him off the ballot. That's the way that you're hearing this discussed already by Trump's allies. And I think you can hear the frustration from his opponents on the campaign trail, like Ron DeSantis, who was discussing this a little while ago. Here's what he said.
Why could we just say that Biden can't be on the ballot? Because
God, he looks like shit. I'm sorry. This guy gets picked on by Derek Guy all the time on Twitter, and it's so justified. Like every time this guy shows up, do you have any idea how I almost like long for the days where the upper class would promenade and walk around in clothing that cost 50% of their entire fortune, walking around like a big like cobblestone pathway, staring at ducks and laughing at poor people, because rich people today are making mockeries of their wealth. Stop pretending to be like you could hire a stylist. What do you do? I hate you.
Because he let in 8 million illegals into the country and violated
True.
The Constitution, which he has.
DeSantis went on to...
Well, that was about nothing. Vivek Ramaswamy has also, capitalized on this. Vivek has only ever been like since Donald Trump is not participating in the debates, let me be there in his stead guy. And he is virtue signaling over this by saying he's withdrawing from the Colorado GOP primary ballot. Again, purely a virtue signal. This will go to the Democrats, Colorado. Colorado will go to the Democrats. It doesn't mean anything. But he's saying, until Donald Trump is reinstated, I will stay away. And I demand Ron DeSantis, Chris Christie, and Nikki Haley do the same immediately. So he's instigating infighting for the purposes of clout, which is fine by me. Do more infighting. It's fine by me. He's wearing the Elon Musk coat. Yeah, it's pretty close to it.
They have just tried to bar President Trump from the Colorado ballot using an unconstitutional maneuver that is a bastardization of the 14th Amendment to our U.S. Constitution.
I'll look at the reply in a sec.
Section 3 that was designed to bar Confederate members, people who switched to the Confederacy, from actually being able to serve. That's very different than what's at issue here, to say the least. This is a hollowed out husk of what the country was built on. The basic principle that we, the people, select our leadership, not the unelected elite class in the back of palace halls. That's old world Europe, not the United States.
All right, bored of this guy now. Underneath this, you can see the Colorado Republican Party saying, you won't have to because we will withdraw from the primary as a party and convert to a pure caucus system if this is allowed to stand. So people are very rustled about this one. Now, here's the issue, okay? The case that was brought to court in Colorado, it wasn't just brought by partisan Democrats. My understanding is that the group that brought it is relatively independent. I could be wrong on that. I'll double check during this segment. But regardless, the main issue with it is that the Colorado Supreme Court ruling, they're all Republicans. Ah, well, there you go. You know, get your rhino energy brought to bear. The main issue, of course, is that the Colorado Supreme Court is correct. Donald Trump, in a fair system, would be ineligible for the presidency in every state. The only reason that other states haven't done this is because they're pussies and politically biased, and that's really it. So the grounds upon which the disbarment was ruled is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, not the first time we've gone over it on stream. I've said many times that this should apply to Donald Trump. I'm glad that a Supreme Court, even if it's just from Colorado, agreed with me on the matter. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So there are two factors to this. There are two elements to this. The first one is, has he engaged in insurrection or rebellion? And the second one is he an officer? Because you might notice that this disbars a person from being an elector of president or vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, if they have previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution, so on and so forth. So those are the prerequisites. Now, does Donald Trump fit under that category? Well, the problem is that much like the rest of the Constitution, this is really poorly written, because it would be pretty stupid if Section 3 of the 14th Amendment barred you from holding office if you were an insurrectionist unless you were a president. Like, oh, literally any state official, as well as anyone in Congress, as well as any officer, they're all barred. But the president of the United States gets a free pass? That seems rather silly to me. So there are two ways that this can be attacked on appeal, which this will go to the Supreme Court of the United States. One of them is Donald Trump an officer of the United States? Which, yes, he obviously is. Yes, San Fran beyond the star, he is commander-in-chief, he is the president. It is ridiculous. It is a ludicrously bad faith reading of this to suggest that this does not apply to the president of the United States. The second question is, did he engage in insurrection? To which the answer is objectively, yes. There's no arguing this. We have had the January 6th Commission. We have had mountains of evidence that are currently being deliberated on in court, indicating Donald Trump knew what he was doing and that this was a deliberate effort to subvert the electoral practices of the United States, to have the elector count sent back for a revote, because the results did not match up with what Donald Trump wanted, which was a victory. So legally, every state in the union should disbar Donald Trump. Now, obviously, that hasn't happened because they're cucks. They're babies. They're cucks. They're silly. They're disgusting. They're vile. They're complicit. You know, I hate them. Now, the Supreme Court is almost certainly going to overturn this on appeal. Which means that this is, I mean, even if the Supreme Court didn't overturn it, this is still a virtue signal kind of act, because Colorado was going to go blue anyway. Doubly so if the Supreme Court overturns it, which means that the only actual practical effect that this can have is to boost Donald Trump. Unfortunately, I think the NBC News article is correct. Now, the problem is, what I am implying by saying this is that the Supreme Court of Colorado should have gone against the correct constitutional ruling and not found Donald Trump to have been an insurrectionist who is disbarred from the presidency purely for optics. Like, is that an acceptable precedent that we should take? Like, oh, well, it would be bad optics for us to enforce the constitutional law against this insurrectionist. Yeah, an impartial judicial ruling would come away with the idea that Donald Trump should not be on the ballot. So I don't know. It seems like in this case, reality is bad optics, because I do not agree with the idea of the Colorado Supreme Court essentially lying and ruling incorrectly purely because of the optics consideration. It's, I don't really know what to say about it, unfortunately. The problem is that the political environment that we're in right now is one in which it is optically detrimental to acknowledge how bad our opposition is, because the liberal establishment in this country has not gone full force against Donald Trump and his cronies. We have some like pending legal cases, but much more could have been done. Much more could have been, shouted from the soapbox. And as a consequence of that, we've allowed Republicans to take a position where they can act indignant and outrage when they suffer the consequences of the behavior we all agree they engaged in. We gave Republicans the room to do this, this crying and hand wringing and screaming and bitching and so on. For doing something that they proudly did. They proudly engaged in. Yeah, Alec Gunter, they've done this. The Democrats have given Republicans room. I think it would have been much better if Democrats were loudly aggro this entire time. Be clear about it. Stop with this, oh, he's a threat to our democracy and the gent, blah, blah. You should be screaming this from the rooftops, The Republicans scream from the rooftops anytime a children's TV show has a non-binary character. That's the meteor that killed the dinosaurs to them. That's the Holocaust to them. They're always screaming. They're always shouting from the top of their lungs. Meanwhile, Democrats, when was the last time you heard Biden deliver an impassioned anything? I know the guy's like 50 million years old, but there are plenty of other people in the Democratic Party who could be doing that for him, But the only real energy the Democrats seem to be exerting right now is keeping the progressive members of their constituency from trying to defend Palestinians from genocide. That's when the full force of the Democratic Party comes out. That's when they're really ready to go on out there and duke it out and exert some power. When they're like censuring, Rashida Tlaib or cracking down on dissidents within their own party to make sure that everyone falls in line in support for Israel. But when it comes to the Republicans, we get some half-hearted denunciations. We get some whinging. We get some admittedly pretty promising court cases. But what has come of that so far? What Democrats don't understand is how to exercise soft power, because they're institutionalists, and institutionalists are cuckolds who think that the only way you can make any change is by following the process, checking all of the boxes, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and like putting forward a new rule, when in reality a significant amount of cultural power comes from being really loud about what matters. That's a huge part of it. He knows how to be loud. That's why he gets fed every morning. I never forget. Jumps up onto my bed and makes sure I remember. What I'm saying is that Biden is worse than my cat, which he is. Seriously, though, like that is where a lot of cultural power comes from. Rules wise, how much have Republicans gotten done in the past, 8 years? Honestly, not that much. They've been obstructionist to a lot of Biden's agenda. Donald Trump didn't get much done during his presidency. Even at a state level, the efforts by the Republican governors and legislatures have been constantly overturned by courts. So, how much have they actually gotten done? A lot of what they've done is culturally normalize their talking points by being loud and consistent. The Republican Party has a consistent message. They've been active. They've been loud. Roe? Well, Roe was from the Supreme Court, which isn't directly an apparatus of the Republican Party. I mean, obviously it indirectly is. I more mean how much have they gotten done through the apparatuses that they have in power as legislators, How much of what they have done, how much of what Republicans have done has been a product of them changing the rules. A huge portion of what they've done, what their efforts have led to, has been just the product of them yelling. But Democrats don't yell because it's impolite. It's impolite. It's uncivil. They don't believe in it. A lot of Democrats will unironically say shit like, well, what do you expect Joe Biden to do when Joe Biden is, half 1 foot in the grave, can't deliver an impassioned speech for his life? Has everyone forgotten how important it is to have a charismatic leader who rallies support? Like, wouldn't it be nice if we had anywhere near as much vocal advocacy for progressive interests as we do against it? Every Republican demagogue and politician goes on out there and tries to make a name for themselves by screaming about how children are being groomed because they learn about the existence of gay people offhandedly by a book that mentions them in like a biographical sense. Meanwhile, Democrats at a local level, Democrats have been a lot better, admittedly, especially in the Midwest. But at a federal level, basically silent, just dead silent. Because the federal Democrats, this is like New York Democrat tier shit, They're complacent, they're weak, they're completely institutionally oriented. Like, there's just no interest in exerting cultural power. And as a consequence, now we have this. Everyone with half a brain knows that Donald Trump did an insurrection, attempted one, And we can't even say that through court rulings. We can't even acknowledge the natural consequence of that without being worried about the optical downsides. There shouldn't be any optical downsides to this because everything that was ruled by the Colorado Supreme Court should have been screamed by every Democrat at the federal level every day since January 6th. How are Republicans going to act indignant and outraged about this ruling when they've had to deal with 800 previous days of Democrats going, yeah, you're an insurrectionist, you don't belong in office, blah, blah. If they've been saying that consistently, then what are Republicans going to do? Act like this is out of nowhere? Because it's not. You notice how no one is defending Trump as saying he should be on the ballot because he didn't do an insurrection. They're not denying the crime he did. Yeah, the optics concerns from the liberals is yeah, he did the crime, but optics or whatever. And with conservatives, I haven't even seen conservatives conservatives aren't even putting any energy behind fighting the claim because they know that it would be bad optics for them, to their voter base, to be no, Donald Trump didn't attempt an insurrection, because at this point, a third of the Republican constituency would go, what do you mean he didn't? We fought. You're saying you're siding with the deep state. This is so flagrant. The Republicans aren't even pretending they're not doing the thing that they're clearly doing. They're getting indignant over Donald Trump facing consequences for a crime they don't even care to deny he did. I hate it. And it doesn't even matter whether or not the Supreme Court overturns this, which, by the way, when the Supreme Court does overturn this, that's another big optics win to the GOP, by the way, because then it's oh, Colorado attempted to subvert democracy and the Republican-led Supreme Court restored it or whatever. So that's another win for them. Obviously, keeping Donald Trump from running for the presidency is a pro-democracy move. It is not pro-democracy to let anti-Democrats run, for the presidency. It's not. A democracy must defend itself. It's like if you're a pacifist society and all of a sudden, a bunch of fucking bloodthirsty lunatics start killing everyone. It's not anti-pacifism to defend yourself against them. That's not hypocrisy. It's why I always hate the idea. I really hate it's always such a gotcha. You're fighting war for peace. You can fight a war for peace. What are you talking about? Do you think all wars are wars of aggression? Is self-defense waging war? What are you talking about? The social contract that allows us to protect ourselves via self-defense is a process for peace, Can you see the Republican court try to ditch Trump because they're a liability to their legitimacy? No. Trump is the only thing the GOP has. That's been pretty clear from the primaries. Listen, have you heard anything from the last two GOP primary debates? I haven't even covered them because I don't give a shit. It's very obviously Trump's party. They're no one else has even come close to stepping up to the plate to legitimize themselves as a meaningful contender there. It's worthless. It's a waste of time. They're all just fighting over book deals at this point or lesser offices. It's Trump's party. Trump is their only hope. They have to stand by Trump no matter what. I get your point, but pacifism as an ideology explicitly condemns self-defense. Wrong analogy. No, I'm pretty sure that's not the entirety of pacifist ideology. Also, I don't think that's true. Maybe some kind of extreme pacifism, but that's dumb as fuck. You're pacifist, so someone just wants to murder you and take your shit, you just let. I think that's a straw man of pacifism. I think pretty self-defeating. Or if nothing else, even if they do believe that, that's retarded, because then their pacifist society can never take root, right? If you want pacifism to be like a broader social trend, if like letting the first murderer who knocks on your door instantly end your entire fucking soft revolution, it's pretty fucking dumb, you know? Why is the immediate assumption the Supreme Court will overturn the decision? They almost certainly will. If they do so in time, I'm pretty sure the filing deadline is the 5th of January in Colorado. So they only have like 2 weeks to do it. However, if the Supreme Court like willfully does not overturn it and lets the Colorado ruling stand, that would be incredibly funny. I don't even know what the political outcome from that would be. A bunch of conservatives like screaming at and sending death threats to the conservative, justices who, didn't. If the Supreme Court decides to take the case, the deadline will continue until SCOTUS makes a decision. Will it? I don't think that's necessarily the case. The Supreme Court in the past, like with the Gore-Bush election, they literally said like, yeah, we're not going to rule on this, or like, we're not going to take this ruling because that would mean like redrawing the maps. And that would take more time than we have. You know, I don't know. I mean, I guess that depends. That'd be like a case-by-case thing. They can do anything. I mean, they can do anything. They did that cynically? Yeah, I suppose. The Colorado court says it will continue if SCOTUS takes it. Okay. Do you think there's a case for banning the GOP? I don't think you should ban. I don't believe in banning a political party. I think that banning individual reps is fine though. Yeah, for sure. I don't think you can ban the whole GOP because I think it would be undemocratic to sort of like axe the party entirely, I suppose. You would need to do like a case-by-case basis kind of deal. I don't know if that would necessarily solve the problem either. You would want to be like targeted is the thing. You want to be careful with stuff like that, not like super broad and sort of overreaching. What if the GOP becomes indistinguishable from the Nazi Party? Well, if a party itself becomes like an apparatus of war against democracy, then sure. I guess maybe you could make an argument for that now. I'm pretty sure that like the Texas GOP already has like the illegitimacy of Biden's victory in 2020 is part of their state like platform, you know? The Texas GOP literally as like a policy point says like that was an illegitimate election. So I don't know. Maybe. Actually, the more that I think about it, I don't know, man. Yeah, it's the GOP definitely is not just like a group of bad apples on an individual level or whatever. Maybe. The problem is ultimately that all of this is being done at a state level, and red states are not going to agree to destroy themselves. So, you know, it doesn't matter, Doombot. Gorsuch has never been consistent. Republican Supreme Court justices don't believe in anything. Constitutional originalism is just a way for them to say whatever they want at any given point in time. They don't actually believe in anything. I mean, that's what I'm doing, girl with a guitar. Because that's not up to the Colorado Supreme Court to decide, Mughlatan. Constitutionally, states have a right to determine their own electoral processes, and they're given a lot of leeway in doing this. Again, conservative justices don't, like, they're court wizards. There's no actual consistency to their ruling. There's no point in going like, well, logically they should do this, because, you know, who the fuck knows?